Macho John Madden up against the seawall in Veracruz, Mexico. And my story about Boca Del Rio and the power of the rich is going to be combined with some of my personal story, in which a working class kid made good, got a PhD in clinical psychology. We trained at the big university teaching hospital next to the psychiatrists, and they were such a different cut than us. We were rebelling against our faculty, trying to learn new approaches to therapy that would really help people. And the psychiatrists were learning how to diagnose and give meds. And when we watched the difference between us in battle with our faculty, because we wanted new and revolutionary and wonderful ways to treat people, we'd watch the psychiatry residents being escorted through the halls with their mentors, who basically were saying, my son, and most of them were men back then, eventually all of this will be yours and you'll make a lot of money. And they do. But after a wonderful career, 20 years as a psychologist and 15 years as a management consultant for them at AT&T at the height of its glory, I experienced in my early 40s a perfect storm of life crises. Moved to Cincinnati to be closer to my son. Cincinnati didn't fit me at all. I worked at the power company that had a totally different culture than AT&T, and left behind my beloved Chicago, working class Irish in Chicago. And my sex abuse memories came back and crushed me, blew my life out of the water. And Stanislav Grof, transpersonal psychologist, says that could be a wonderful time for you to learn that life is really not about what you achieve out there in the world, fame and money. It's not even about family, it's about spiritually waking up to who you really are. And if someone around me had been a spiritual coach to help me through that crisis, to get underneath career which had fallen apart. I had been fired from a job at the power company, even though I was doing great there. And family had fallen apart for me because I thought I'd be happier seeing my son more often, but it actually rubbed my nose into the fact that he wasn't living with me, and I was suffering deeply, and then my sex abuse memories came back. And Grof says, in our society, there mostly aren't genuine spiritual teachers until you get taken to the doctors, who are our version of gods, and they take you to the psychiatrists who really know their God, and they give you a diagnosis and life-killing drugs. And for me, having railed against diagnosis in my clinical psychology training, I said, I'm in so much pain. If you have a pill that will help me feel better, I'll take it, and take your stupid diagnosis too. So the psychiatry industry, which I think is one of the most destructive forces in American society, blew my life out of the water. For 30 years. I was unable to work, mostly. I was in so much pain and chaos. And I would love to sue the American Psychiatric Association for all the lost income, millions of dollars. Because at my height, I was making $2,000 a week consulting to Arthur Andersen. At that point, the most powerful accounting firm and consulting firm in the world. Now I've woken up. A friend, when I went to Asheville, North Carolina in 2004, I said, I don't want to do psychology, I don't want to do management consulting, I want to be the working class hero I was always meant to be. And I did all frontline customer service. And one of my customers at Earth Fair, the hippy dippy Anchor, the original store of Whole Foods' primary competition in the Southeast, that was the store where it was the soul of Asheville, which was a very vibrant alternative town. And it's where everybody went to meet. And one of my customers there, I was 4 years a cashier, and my favorite job ever, serving customers. Doug said to me, I don't think you ever had a mental disorder. I've been studying Stanislav Grof, I think you were misdiagnosed. And Doug, taking the risk of confronting me that way, set in motion a series of events that ended up with me spiritually waking up and dropping the bipolar label and getting off my meds and having a wonderful life the last 4 years. But in many ways, my life was crushed by the power of the haves versus the have-nots. And Boca Del Rio, so I've been poor. I've been traveling for 4 years on a Social Security check and no pension, nothing like that. So I'm always poor at the end of the month. And when I run out of money, I can't buy cigarettes even in Mexico where they're so cheap. So I re-roll my old butts in rolling paper. And a cop came by and visited me along the seawall in Boca Del Rio right up by La Bamba and said, okay, you've let me smell your tobacco. We both know it's tobacco, it's not marijuana. But my wealthy patrons think that you're rolling cannabis cigarettes. And working class people throughout Mexico use cannabis. But the wealthy people of Boca Del Rio thought it was horrible, and they didn't. In the same way that I got thrown out of Luis Cordoba's wonderful restaurant because the patron didn't like my dirty shirt, the wealthy people of Boca Del Rio had said to the cops, that guy is smoking marijuana. And what that straight shooting cop said to me was, if I get one more complaint from my benefactors about you, I'm going to have to run you in just to make them happy, even though I know you're not breaking any laws. That's the bad karma of police in the U.S. and Mexico. That's what the police are like in Louisville, Kentucky, where they are the guardians of the old establishment in what the black people call the northernmost southern city in the U.S. It's not what cops are like in Chicago, where they're working class and they love working class people. In Louisville, Kentucky, if I parked in a city parking lot adjacent to a city park, I would get run out and threatened to have my car impounded. My first day in Chicago, I said to the cops at the local, right where I used to live next to the beach, Loyola Beach and Rogers Park in Chicago, I said, it says I have to feed the meters 24 hours a day. Is that true? And these two Latino cops said, technically, but there's nobody coming around in a wrecker to tow, and we've never seen a meter maid, so don't bother. And can I sleep in my camper van in the park here? Because never was allowed in Louisville. Yeah, why not? So that was my base of operations for 6 weeks in Chicago. But unfortunately, in so many parts of America, cops know that their job is... The origin of cops was renegade slave patrols. The Republicans deny that, but it's not true. It is true that that's where they came from, to protect the whites from the blacks. And the reason that defunding the police is a good thing to do is that if the cops weren't spending so much time harassing poor and homeless people, we could cut their budget in half. And if we made 911 calls not automatically a police call, but often a social work call, there would be so much better outcomes for poor mentally ill people who end up getting killed or arrested or humiliated by cops who know their job is to protect the rich from the poor. Okay, I think that's that one.